The rain fell in jagged sheets, a relentless torrent that hammered against the windows of my small suburban home. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, staring at the empty street beyond, my mind racing with a dozen horrifying possibilities. How could this have happened? How could he just vanish? My adopted son, my little boy, the one I'd loved with every fiber of my being, simply disappeared from his room as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. It had started like any other Thursday. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon, the air crisp with winter's first bite. I had gone about my morning routine, making breakfast, checking my emails, leaving a small note on the kitchen counter for him. He hadn't eaten the toast I'd prepared, and his room door, usually left ajar, was tightly shut. I called his name softly at first, then louder, my voice trembling. "Ethan?" No answer. My heart thudded painfully. I approached the door and with trembling hands pushed it open. His bed was made neatly, just as he had left it the night before. His favorite stuffed fox, Rusty, lay perfectly tucked under the blanket. His laptop was gone. His backpack, gone. And worst of all, the window was wide open. Panic clawed at my chest. I ran down the stairs 2 at a time and dialed the police, trying to keep my voice steady. "My son, he's missing," I stammered. "Please, you have to help me find him." While I waited, my mind wandered through a labyrinth of fear. I had adopted Ethan when he was 3. He had come from a troubled home, a mother who had given him up under circumstances I never fully understood. I had believed I knew everything about his past, every dark corner and every shadow, every story that had made him who he was. Or so I had thought. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I warned you. You don't know what you're dealing with." The blood drained from my face. My fingers shook as I opened the message. The next text arrived almost immediately. "If you want to see him alive again, you need to start listening, and fast." I sank to the floor, the phone clutched tightly in my hands. My breath came in ragged gasps. The words burned themselves into my mind. It wasn't the police, not a stranger. It was her, his biological mother, the one woman I had never truly wanted to contact again, the one I had pushed to the periphery of our lives for Ethan's safety. And now she had sent me a warning, a threat, and I had no idea what it meant. The hours that followed blurred into a nightmare. The police arrived, questioned me, took notes, and promised to do everything in their power. But the unease in their eyes told me what I already feared. No one could control the chaos that was now unraveling around me. Then came another text. "You think you know him. You don't. He's not who you think he is, and you're running out of time." I stared at the words, the storm outside echoing the tempest inside my chest. Who was he really? And what had I adopted? The night deepened, and sleep was impossible. I sat in Ethan's room, surrounded by the remnants of his life, piecing together every memory, every detail. There was something in his eyes, something I had never noticed before, a flicker of fear or knowledge that I had dismissed as childish imagination. But now I wondered, had he always known something? Something that had made him a target? By midnight, the city's silence was deafening. I called everyone I could think of, friends, neighbors, his school. No one had seen him, and in the back of my mind, a terrifying thought settled. What if this wasn't a random disappearance? What if this was orchestrated, planned, and I had been blind to it all along? The next morning, the sky was gray, heavy with clouds that promised more rain. My phone buzzed again, another message from her. "Stop looking for him the way you always have. You've been playing the wrong game." The words felt like a punch to the gut. My mind reeled. What game? I had always done everything by the book, every precaution, every step to keep Ethan safe. And yet here I was, powerless, the pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed scattered before me. I had to act. The police could only do so much. The messages made it clear that the answers lay elsewhere. I took a deep breath, forced myself to focus, and decided to revisit every fragment of Ethan's history. The files I had from the adoption agency, old photographs, medical records, even the diary entries he had kept as a child. As I dug deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. There were gaps in the records, unexplained absences, names that didn't make sense. And the more I discovered, the more I realized the life I thought I had built with him was a facade. The boy I had loved, protected, and nurtured carried a past darker than I could have imagined. By mid-afternoon, I traced a lead to a small town on the outskirts of the city. A name, whispered in old records, a place where his mother had lived before I had adopted him. The thought of confronting her filled me with dread, but there was no choice. I had to understand the history I had been kept from, the secrets that now threatened my son's life. When I arrived, the town seemed abandoned, almost ghostly. Narrow streets, empty stores, and a chilling wind that carried whispers through the alleyways. I knocked on the door of a small house, the one linked to her name, and waited. The door creaked open. She was there, older than I remembered, her eyes sharp and calculating. And for a moment, I saw the boy I had adopted reflected in her gaze, and I realized this was the woman who had created him, the woman whose past now demanded that I face truths I wasn't ready for. "I told you not to ignore the signs," she said, her voice calm, almost casual, but beneath it was a threat that froze my blood. "He's in danger, and if you want to save him, you need to listen. Every word, every warning. Time is not on your side." My hands trembled. Where is he?" I asked, my voice breaking. She smiled faintly, almost sadly. "You'll see soon enough. But first, you need to understand why he disappeared. You need to understand what you adopted. And that, my dear, is just the beginning." As I drove back to the city, my mind spun with fear and questions. Who had taken him, and why? And more importantly, what had I brought into my home all those years ago? The morning was clear. Nothing was as it seemed, and the danger was far closer than I had ever imagined. That night, I sat by Ethan's empty bed, the phone beside me buzzing with yet another message. "They're watching. Don't make a move until you know the truth. It's coming for him, and you." The storm outside had intensified, the rain slamming against the windows like a drumbeat of doom. My heart raced, every shadow in the room a potential threat. One thing was certain. My life, the life I had built with Ethan, had changed forever. And now I had to race against time, against secrets older and darker than I could have ever imagined, to bring my son back. The city streets were eerily quiet the morning after Ethan's disappearance. I drove through the fog, every street lamp casting distorted shadows that seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't meant to hear. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached, but I couldn't stop. I had to follow the trail, the fragmented, cryptic trail that his biological mother had reluctantly laid before me. I parked near the old library, a place that Ethan had loved as a child, a place he had always claimed held hidden stories. The building, once grand, now leaned with age, its windows grimy, its doors creaking under the weight of years. I stepped inside, the scent of dust and forgotten paper filling my lungs, and I immediately felt it, the sense of being watched. Someone or something was waiting, hiding in the shadows. The first clue came from a stack of old newspapers tucked in a corner labeled Local Events 2005. My eyes scanned the pages until a photograph stopped me cold. A young boy, almost indistinguishable from Ethan, stood in a playground, his eyes wide, staring straight into the camera. The caption read, "Local boy goes missing, rescued after days in an abandoned warehouse." My heart pounded. The date was years before I had adopted him, and the warehouse mentioned was the same one that Ethan's biological mother had cryptically referenced in her first warning. I ripped the page from the stack and ran my fingers over the words, as if touching them could reveal more. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from her. "You found the first piece, but beware, every answer leads to more questions, and some questions are dangerous." I felt a chill run down my spine. The warnings were no longer abstract. They were reality, wrapped around me like a tightening noose. I had to continue, no matter the cost. The library's archives offered me another clue, a series of letters, unsent or perhaps intercepted, detailing interactions between his biological mother and a man whose name recurred like a shadow, Damien. The letters hinted at a secret organization, one that had been involved in Ethan's early life. They mentioned experiments, surveillance, and a hidden agenda. Words blurred on the paper as fear and disbelief collided inside me. Who was Damien? And why had this shadowy figure haunted Ethan's life before I even knew him? I left the library, my mind racing. I had to find Damien, or at least someone who knew him. The rain had returned, heavier this time, and the streets glistened with reflections of flickering neon signs. Every puddle mirrored my fear, every shadow felt alive,
Every passerby seemed like they could be part of the sinister puzzle. Hours passed as I tracked down old acquaintances from Ethan's past. A retired teacher remembered a boy with striking eyes, one that seemed to hold secrets far beyond his age. She mentioned whispers of experiments at the warehouse, children being tested, disappearing for days or weeks at a time. The details were fragmented, inconsistent, but they painted a pattern. Ethan had been part of something far darker than any adoption file had revealed. By evening, I found myself at the outskirts of the city, a dilapidated warehouse matching the description in the letters and newspaper. My heart thundered as I approached. The door was ajar, swaying slightly with the wind, as if inviting me into the unknown. I hesitated, hand hovering over the handle. The air smelled of damp concrete and decay. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but the thought of Ethan, alone and terrified, propelled me forward. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of shadows and discarded machinery. The walls were lined with old crates, their labels faded. I moved silently, the echo of my footsteps deafening in the emptiness. Then a sound, a whisper, reached my ears, barely audible yet unmistakable. "Mom, help me." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Ethan? No, it couldn't be. The voice sounded like him, but distorted, like a recording played too fast. I moved to the source, my hands trembling, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The warehouse seemed endless, each corridor leading to another, each room a new enigma. Then I found it, a small door, partially hidden by crates. The sound of the voice was stronger here, more urgent. I pushed it open, and what I saw made my stomach drop. A small room, abandoned toys scattered across the floor, a crib in the corner. And then, scrawled on the wall in hasty, shaky letters, "You were warned. You can't save him alone." The message was fresh, the ink still smudged. Someone had been here recently. My phone buzzed again. Another text. "You're close, but he's not where you think. Trust no one. Damien is watching." Damien. The name burned into my mind. Whoever he was, he had followed Ethan's life, perhaps orchestrated events from the shadows. And now he's somewhere out there, controlling pieces of a game I had only just realized I was part of.
I left the warehouse trembling, rain soaking my clothes, a storm raging inside me, far worse than the one outside. The clues were piling up, but so was the danger. Whoever Damien was, he had been watching Ethan for years, and if my son's life had been in peril before, now the threat was immediate. Back at home, I spread out all the evidence: newspaper clippings, letters, photographs, text messages. I tried to piece together the timeline, the connections, the hidden history that no adoption file could reveal. Each piece of the puzzle only deepened the mystery. Ethan's early years were a labyrinth of shadows: abductions, threats, secret organizations, unexplained disappearances, and I had been blind to it all. A knock at the door startled me. I froze. Who could it be at this hour? My phone buzzed again, a text from the unknown number. "They know you're digging. Be careful who you trust." I opened the door cautiously. No one was there, just a small envelope lying on the doormat. Inside, a single photograph. Ethan, older than in my memories, standing in a place I didn't recognize. And behind him, a shadowy figure, Damien. His face was obscured, but the posture, the aura, the way he loomed over Ethan sent a chill through my entire body. I realized with a sinking heart that this wasn't just about his disappearance. Damien had been a part of Ethan's life before adoption, a dark force shaping his destiny. And now it seems Damien had returned. Desperation clawed at me. I needed allies, but who could I trust? Everyone I knew, everyone I thought I could rely on, now seemed like potential threats. I had to be careful, meticulous, calculating. The text messages had warned me not to trust anyone, and for the first time, I realized the depth of the danger we were in. The night dragged on, filled with frantic calls, online research, and restless pacing. Every piece of information I uncovered only intensified the fear. Damien was not just a man, he was part of something larger, something that had been watching, manipulating, and controlling Ethan's life from the shadows. Finally, exhaustion forced me to lie down, but sleep eluded me. Every shadow in my home became a potential threat, every creak in the floor a sign of intruders. And then, as if to punctuate my terror, my phone buzzed one last time before I drifted into a fitful rest. "The first move is yours. Make it wisely. Damien knows your every step, and he will not forgive mistakes." I closed my eyes,
the weight of the messages pressing down on me. One thing was clear: the clock was ticking. Every second that passed brought Ethan closer to danger, and every step I took brought me deeper into a conspiracy I barely understood. Tomorrow, I would continue the hunt. I would track Damien, uncover the secrets of Ethan's past, and follow the trail laid out for me. There was no turning back. I had to save him, and I would, no matter the cost.
The morning air was thick with fog, the kind that made the world feel suspended between reality and nightmare. I had barely slept, my mind haunted by images of Ethan's empty room, the threatening messages, and the shadowy figure in the photograph I had received. Damien's name echoed relentlessly in my thoughts. Who was he, and why had his presence dictated so much of Ethan's life long before I even knew him? I knew I couldn't act alone. The danger was far greater than I had imagined, and the enemy far more elusive. Yet, I had no choice. Clutching the envelope with Ethan's photograph, I set out to trace the figure in the background. The photograph was my only lead, a frozen moment of a reality I barely comprehended. I drove through winding streets to the outskirts of the city, following coordinates I had pieced together from old letters, cryptic diary entries, and hints from Ethan's school records. The area was desolate, an abandoned industrial district that smelled of rust and decay. Broken windows reflected the gray sky, and every alley seemed like a trap waiting to spring. A figure moved in the shadows ahead, a man whose presence felt predatory. My heart pounded in recognition. Damien. He didn't turn as I approached, his posture relaxed yet menacing. There was a cruel familiarity in his movements, as though he had been expecting me. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally, his voice low and deliberate. "Some truths are dangerous, and some truths will destroy you." I swallowed my fear. "Where is he? Where is my son?" My voice was stronger than I felt. Damien's eyes flickered, a hint of amusement. Or was it malice? "He's closer than you think, but the closer you get, the more perilous it becomes. You've been following pieces of a puzzle, but the picture you're trying to see, it's incomplete. And incomplete puzzles can kill." Every word felt like a punch to my gut. I had to dig deeper. Damien wasn't just a man. He was a network, a shadow, a force shaping Ethan's life long before I had held him. And now, with every clue I uncovered, the threat loomed closer. I returned home, knowing I needed allies, people who could provide insight into Damien and the hidden organization he was a part of. I reached out to an old investigator I had briefly met during the adoption process, a man named Carter, whose reputation for uncovering secrets preceded him. Within hours, he agreed to meet, sensing the urgency and the terror my words carried. When Carter arrived, he laid out a plan. "Damien is part of something bigger than you think," he said, spreading photographs, maps, and documents across the kitchen table. "There are others like him, involved in monitoring, tracking, sometimes even manipulating children with precision. Ethan's life was never ordinary, and the adoption agency might not have known half of what they were signing off on." I shivered at his words. Every memory of Ethan flashed before me, his sudden fears, the way he sometimes spoke of nightmares, and fragments of things he had said that never made sense at the time. They weren't just childhood imaginings, they were echoes of a life he had barely survived. We traced Damien's movements through public records, photographs, and digital footprints. Every trail led to abandoned warehouses, small towns, and rural properties, each more desolate and foreboding than the last. And everywhere we looked, the sense of being watched was suffocating, an invisible presence keeping tabs on every step we took. Late that evening, my phone buzzed. Another message. "You're closer. Keep digging. But remember, some truths are not meant to be uncovered. Your son's life depends on your choices." The weight of the message pressed down on me. Every step forward brought more danger, yet inaction was not an option. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I had to move. With Carter's help, we identified a location that seemed central to Damien's network, a remote estate hidden by trees and darkness. Intelligence suggested it had been used for years as a hub for observing and controlling children like Ethan. We prepared to approach the estate under the cover of night. Every nerve in my body screamed danger. I imagined Damien's eyes watching, waiting for missteps, orchestrating our every move. But I had to try. I had no other choice. Ethan's life was in the balance. The drive through winding roads leading to the estate was tense. Carter monitored satellite maps and security feeds, while I gripped the wheel, heart thundering. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow along the road felt like a warning. As we approached, the estate emerged from the darkness like a fortress, its gates closed, but faint lights inside suggested someone, or something, was awake. We parked silently, slipping into the forest that surrounded the estate. The trees were thick, undergrowth tearing at our clothes as we moved. From a ridge, I could see the estate clearly. High walls, security cameras, lights moving like sentinels. And then I saw him, Ethan, or someone who looked exactly like him, moving in the courtyard, unaware that we were watching. My breath caught. Relief and terror collided. He was alive, but reaching him would be the most dangerous step of all. Damien's network was vast. This could be a trap. Every shadow pulsed with the threat of discovery. Every second we delayed, the risk escalated. Carter whispered, "We need a plan. One wrong move, and we lose him, or worse." I nodded, mind racing. I thought of all the messages, the warnings, the fragments of Ethan's past I had uncovered. Every clue pointed to a truth I wasn't ready to face. Yet there was no turning back. Ethan's life depended on my ability to navigate a world of secrets, lies, and relentless danger. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the weight of secrets and the unknown. Damien was watching, waiting, ready to strike. Time was running out. Every decision, every step, every breath mattered. I could see Ethan's small figure through the shadows, and a cold realization hit me. I was stepping into a game far more dangerous than I had imagined. Every move would be tested, every choice scrutinized, and failure would be fatal. And then, in the silence of the night, as the estate loomed before us like a fortress of fear, I understood the harsh truth. The closer I got to Ethan, the more I realized that Damien's reach was limitless. He had orchestrated the past, controlled the present, and now he awaited the moment to define the future. The hunt had begun. But would I find him before Damien made his next move?
The night was suffocating, thick with mist that clung to my skin and blurred the outlines of the estate before us. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, even my own heartbeat, seemed amplified in the darkness. Carter and I crouched behind a thick stand of trees, surveying the fortress-like building that had become the epicenter of Ethan's nightmare. I could see the faint glow of lights moving like predators across the estate, the shadow of guards, or maybe automated surveillance, patrolling. My stomach churned. The closer I got, the more I realized that every instinct, every precaution, mattered more than ever. "This place, it's like a maze," I whispered to Carter. "How do we even know where to start?" Carter's eyes were steely, scanning the estate with a predator's precision. "We don't," he said quietly. "We follow the patterns, watch the exits, note the movements, and wait for the right moment. Damien thrives on chaos. He's expecting panic. He's expecting mistakes. We give him neither." I nodded, swallowing hard. Every fiber of my body was screaming to move, to rush in and grab Ethan, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had been reckless before, following leads, chasing shadows, and it had almost cost my son his life. This time, every step would be calculated. Hours passed. We mapped the patrols, memorized the patterns, and prepared a route that would minimize exposure. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another message from Damien, another cryptic warning. But for the first time that night, the silence was almost more terrifying than the messages. Then, from a small window on the far side of the estate, I caught a glimpse of him, Ethan. My heart skipped. Relief surged, followed immediately by fear. He looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile, and yet there was a resilience in his posture that reminded me why I had fallen in love with him the moment I held him in my arms. He was alive, but how long? How close was Damien? Carter laid out the plan in whispers. "We move in 3 stages. First, we distract the surveillance to create a blind spot. Second, we get you to him. Third, extraction." I nodded again, every nerve on fire. "And if we're spotted," I asked, voice low. "Then we improvise," Carter said simply. "There's no room for fear, only focus." We moved through the shadows, hearts pounding. Every step was measured, every sound avoided. I could feel the history of this place, the echoes of the children who had been trapped here before Ethan, the whispers of Damien's manipulation and control.
It was more than just a physical location. It was a psychological labyrinth, a prison designed to break those who entered. As we approached the first checkpoint, a flickering motion sensor caught my eye. I held up a hand, signaling Carter to stop. We crouched, waiting, and I counted the seconds in my head. My mind raced. Every story I had ever heard about children like Ethan, every warning I had received from his biological mother, every sleepless night, it all led to this moment. A sudden shadow moved past the sensor, and the lights flickered. It was our chance. I followed Carter's lead, slipping through the darkness like a ghost. The air was thick with tension, and every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, to grab Ethan and escape. But I knew patience was the only way. Finally, we reached the courtyard. Ethan was there, exactly as the photograph had shown him, but now fully aware of his surroundings. He froze when he saw us, confusion and fear warring in his eyes. I called his name softly, trying to convey calm, safety, love. "Mom?" His voice cracked, a whisper that shredded my heart. I moved closer, careful to stay low, careful not to trigger any alarms. "I'm here, Ethan. I'm here to get you out. Do you trust me?" His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. That single nod felt like a lifeline thrown across a stormy sea. Relief surged through me, but I didn't allow myself to linger. Every second spent in this open courtyard was a second closer to detection. Carter motioned to a side door. "Through there, quickly."
We slipped into the building, shadows moving around us. Ethan clung to my hand, and I whispered reassurances, keeping my voice steady even as fear threatened to consume me. The building was a maze of corridors and locked doors, each one presenting a new challenge. Security cameras monitored every angle, and I knew Damien's influence extended far beyond physical guards. He controlled everything: surveillance, alarms, and probably even the minds of those who worked for him. We reached a stairwell and moved quietly upward. My lungs burned from the tension, my heart hammering like a drum. Every creak of the steps beneath our feet felt deafening. And then a door opened ahead. A figure stepped into the corridor. Damien. He was taller than I remembered, his presence overwhelming, almost inhuman in its intensity. "You think you can sneak around me?" he said, voice cold, deliberate. "You think this ends well for you?" I froze, heart in my throat. Ethan's grip tightened on my hand. I whispered, "Stay close to me. Don't look at him." Damien's gaze swept over us, sharp, calculating. For a moment, I thought we were finished, trapped in the labyrinth of his design. But then Carter stepped forward, moving quickly, grabbing a small device from his bag. A loud mechanical whir filled the corridor, lights flickering and alarms blaring. Damien's attention snapped toward the noise, and I seized the opportunity. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted down the stairs, Ethan clinging to me. The corridors twisted like a nightmare, each turn a new threat, each shadow a potential ambush, but determination fueled every step. I would not let him take my son. We reached a service door leading to the outer perimeter. The night air hit me like a shockwave, cold and liberating. Ethan stumbled, but I caught him, urging him forward. Carter covered our escape, moving with precision to create obstacles for anyone who might pursue. The estate behind us glowed ominously, a fortress of shadows and secrets, and somewhere within, Damien's eyes were watching, calculating, waiting for his next move. We didn't stop running until we were deep in the forest, far from the estate's lights, far from its watchful eyes. Ethan collapsed into my arms, shaking and exhausted, but alive. I held him tightly, whispering promises I had never imagined needing to make again. Yet even in that moment of relief, I knew the danger wasn't over. Damien's network was vast, and his reach was longer than I could measure. The warnings, the threats, the shadows, they were still there, and somewhere in the darkness, the next move was already being planned. Time was slipping, and the game had only just begun. The deeper I delved in Ethan's past, the more I realized that saving him would require every ounce of courage, intelligence, and endurance I possessed. The night had tested us, but the true challenge, the confrontation with Damien and the secrets he guarded, was yet to come. The forest around us was silent now, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on my shoulders. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Every decision, every move, every heartbeat mattered. And if we weren't careful, the next step could be the last.
The morning after our escape was silent, almost deceptively calm.
Ethan slept fitfully in the corner of the room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of pine and damp earth from the forest. I sat nearby, staring at the wall, replaying every moment of last night over and over in my mind. Every decision, every move we made, it had all been precarious, hanging by the thinnest threads. And yet, we had survived. For now. Carter was already at his laptop, scrolling through surveillance footage and digital maps, piecing together Damien's network with a precision I couldn't even begin to comprehend. He glanced at me, eyes hard but tired. "He's planning something bigger," he said. "Last night was just a test, a probe. Damien wanted to see how you'd react, how quickly you'd move, and now he knows what we're capable of." My stomach tightened. I had known Damien's reach was long, but hearing it stated aloud made the danger tangible. Ethan's past wasn't just a shadowy childhood. It was a web of influence, manipulation, and constant surveillance. And now he was a target again. I approached Ethan cautiously. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, brushing his hair from his face. He nodded slowly, eyes wide, the remnants of fear still visible. "Mom, will he come back?" His voice trembled. I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "We won't let him. We'll keep you safe, I promise. But we have to be smart. We can't rush into this. Every move counts." Ethan looked down, processing the gravity of our situation. I could see the child I had adopted, the one I thought I knew, mixing with someone I didn't recognize, a survivor of forces far darker than I had ever imagined. Carter pulled me back to the laptop. "I've identified several key locations tied to Damien's operations," he said, pointing to a map dotted with red markers. "These are places he uses to monitor, control, and manipulate. We need to understand them before we move. And there's one place that stands out, the main hub. If we take that down, or at least infiltrate it, we might have a chance to finally uncover the truth about Ethan's past and Damien's plans." My heart raced. The idea of confronting Damien directly was terrifying, but I had no choice. Every lead, every clue, every warning had led to this point. I couldn't run anymore. Not when my son's life and his very identity was on the line. We packed light and moved cautiously, traveling only at night to avoid detection. The forest was our shield, the shadows our allies. Ethan walked close to me, holding my hand, trusting me implicitly. The weight of that trust pushed me forward, gave me strength despite the fear gnawing at my insides. As we approached the outskirts of the city, Carter's face darkened. "We're close," he said, voice low. "But Damien knows we're coming. He's expecting us to make mistakes. That's how he traps people, through misdirection, fear, and control. If we're not careful, he could be waiting for us at the hub itself." I felt a chill. The hub was more than just a building. It was a symbol of Damien's power, the center of the web that had ensnared Ethan and countless others. And now, walking toward it, I realized the real danger wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Damien had designed his traps to manipulate, confuse, and intimidate anyone who dared to challenge him. Hours passed as we moved through the city outskirts, navigating empty streets, alleys, and abandoned warehouses. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified. And yet, we pressed on. Every step was deliberate, calculated, a game of survival against an enemy who thrived on chaos. Finally, we reached the outer perimeter of the hub. It was larger than I had imagined, an imposing structure of steel and concrete, surrounded by high fences, cameras, and what appeared to be motion sensors. Carter whispered instructions, pointing out weak points, blind spots, and alternative routes. Ethan clung to my side, silent but alert. His trust in me was absolute, and that responsibility weighed heavily on my shoulders. I had to succeed. I had to protect him, no matter what.
We moved into position under the cover of darkness, every step measured, every shadow an ally. Carter disabled the first set of cameras, creating a narrow window of opportunity. I signaled to Ethan to stay low, whispering reassurances, urging him to trust the plan. The hub's interior was a maze of corridors, control rooms, and high security doors. It smelled faintly of metal and electricity, the hum of machinery filling the silence. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, every shadow a potential threat. We reached a control room where monitors displayed surveillance from throughout the hub. Damien's presence was everywhere, cameras, guards, and unknown observers.
I realized with growing horror that Damien's reach extended far beyond what we had imagined. He wasn't just a man, he was a system, a force controlling events from the shadows. Carter worked quickly to disable the security feeds, while I kept watch on the monitors. Ethan stayed close, silent, absorbing the gravity of our mission. Every second we spent here increased the risk, yet it was the only way to uncover the truth. Suddenly, a voice cut through the static of the monitors. "You're braver than I expected," it said. "Damien." His voice echoed through hidden speakers, omnipresent, chilling. "But bravery without strategy is useless. You think you can challenge me and succeed? You have no idea what you're dealing with." My heart pounded, but I forced my focus. Damien had underestimated one thing: a mother's determination, a parent's love that no system could measure or contain. "We are not afraid of you," I said, voice steady despite the fear. "We'll uncover the truth, and we'll save Ethan, no matter what it takes." For a moment, silence. Then a series of alarms blared. Damien had triggered a response, activating security measures we hadn't anticipated. Guards moved rapidly through the corridors, and we were forced to improvise. Carter guided us to a narrow service corridor, leading to an exit we hadn't planned for. As we ran, the hub seemed to twist around us, a labyrinth designed to confuse and trap. Every turn, every step was a battle against fear and uncertainty. Ethan's hand was in mine, and I whispered constant reassurances, keeping him focused on the path. We emerged into a storage area filled with crates and machinery. The space was dark, but it offered temporary cover. We paused, catching our breath, knowing that the hub was vast and Damien's eyes might still be on us. Carter whispered urgently, "We can't stay here long. He'll know we're inside. We need to move to the central floor, the core of the hub. That's where we'll find the files, the information about Ethan's past and Damien's operations. Once we have that, we can plan our next move." My heart sank and raced simultaneously. The central floor was the most dangerous part of the hub, the heart of Damien's control, but it was the only way to uncover the truth. We moved silently, shadows among shadows, guided by Carter's precision. Every corridor seemed endless, every step measured. And then, from above, a voice called out, ominous, familiar. "Damien, you think you can outsmart me? This game isn't over," he said. "Every step you take, every move you make, is exactly what I predicted. Welcome to the true test. Welcome to the hub." I swallowed hard, heart hammering. We were deep inside Damien's domain now, the epicenter of danger, deception, and secrets that had shaped Ethan's life from the very beginning. Every choice mattered, every misstep could be fatal, and the truth, what Damien had done and why, was closer than ever. And yet, despite the fear, despite the stakes, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would not stop. I would not falter. Ethan's life and the answers to his past depended on my courage, my focus, and my unwavering determination. The real battle had begun.
The core of the hub loomed before us like the heart of a dark machine, humming with the energy of secrets and surveillance. I could feel the weight of Damien's presence pressing down, even though he wasn't visible. Every monitor, every camera, every hidden speaker seemed like a part of him, watching, calculating, predicting our next move. Ethan clung to my side, silent now, absorbing the gravity of this place. I whispered to him, "Stay close. I promise we'll get through this." Carter motioned to a narrow staircase leading to the central floor. "This is it," he said in a low voice. "The control room, the archives, everything. If we want answers about Damien, about Ethan's past, and why he's been targeted, this is where we find them." I nodded, swallowing the fear that threatened to paralyze me. The moment of truth had arrived. Everything, every sleepless night, every cryptic warning, every desperate chase had led to this one point. I tightened my grip on Ethan's hand, feeling the fragile strength of the child I had fought so hard to protect. As we ascended the stairs, the hum of machinery grew louder, and the shadows seemed to deepen around us. It was a physical and psychological maze designed to intimidate and disorient. I felt a chill run down my spine. Damien was not just an enemy, he was a master manipulator, orchestrating fear and control with meticulous precision. We reached the top,
and the central control room sprawled before us, vast and intimidating. Screens covered the walls, displaying feeds from all over the hub. Data streams flashed on monitors, files stacked and indexed, and the presence of hidden observers was palpable. Every step we took was monitored, every move anticipated. Carter moved quickly, bypassing security systems with practiced skill. "We don't have much time," he whispered. "Once Damien realizes we're inside, he'll trigger a lockdown. We need the files, now." I approached the nearest terminal, heart pounding, and began searching for anything that would shed light on Ethan's past. Names, dates, locations, operations, everything that had been hidden from me. And then I found it, a folder labeled with Ethan's full birth name, containing detailed records, photographs, and documents revealing the extent of Damien's manipulation. I froze as I read. Ethan's life had been monitored, controlled, and shaped from the moment he was born. Damien's organization had tracked him, influenced his environments, and orchestrated circumstances that even I had misinterpreted as ordinary childhood events. And yet, there were gaps, pieces of information missing, deliberately hidden. The truth was more horrifying than I had imagined, yet it was finally within reach. Ethan's eyes widened as he peered over my shoulder. "Mom, is that me?" he asked softly, voice trembling. "Yes," I said, holding back tears. This is everything about you, everything you've never known. But we'll get through this. We'll face it together." Carter's voice cut through the tension. "We have the files, but Damien will be coming. He won't let this go. We need an exit strategy, now." I looked at Ethan, saw the fear and the courage mirrored in his eyes, and nodded. We moved together. No hesitation. We survive.
We retraced our steps through the corridors, files in hand, every shadow a potential threat. The hub seemed alive, responding to our presence as if Damien's will permeated the very walls. Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashing. Damien had discovered our intrusion. Carter grabbed Ethan's hand, leading us down an emergency corridor. "We need to split for speed. There's a secondary exit in the east wing." I hesitated. Splitting up could increase risk, but staying together would slow us. I made a quick decision. "Go ahead," I said. "Get Ethan out. I'll create a diversion." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, no." "I'll be fine," I said firmly. "Go, now." Carter and Ethan ran, disappearing into the shadows of the east wing. I turned back to face Damien's approaching forces, every sense alert, heart hammering with fear and determination. I triggered a series of alarms and mechanical obstacles I had noticed during our initial entry. The hub erupted in chaos, flashing lights, blocked corridors, and security measures malfunctioning. My diversion was buying time. I heard Damien's voice, cold and commanding, echoing through the corridors. "You think you can outsmart me? This is my world. You cannot escape." I ducked behind a metal crate, clutching a small device Carter had given me, a hacking tool capable of creating temporary blackouts in the hub's security systems. I triggered it, plunging several corridors into darkness. I could hear Damien's frustrated commands, the shouts of guards scrambling. My heart pounded. Every second counted. Meanwhile, I could hear Ethan's voice faintly through the comms Carter had set up. "Mom, we're almost out." I pressed forward, weaving through the maze of the hub, every corner a potential ambush. The files in my hand were heavier than any physical burden. They carried the weight of truth, the secrets of a life stolen, and the evidence needed to finally confront Damien. Finally, I reached a corridor leading to the main exit. The night air rushed in like freedom, but Damien was there, blocking my path. He smiled coldly, eyes glinting with malice. "You've done well to come this far, but it ends here. You cannot escape me." I stood my ground, files clutched tightly. "This ends now, Damien. No more manipulation, no more secrets. Ethan's life is his own." He laughed, low and menacing. "Brave words, but do you understand the forces you've just unleashed? You're not just fighting me. You're fighting every thread I've woven into this world. You cannot win." The tension exploded into chaos. Security systems engaged, cards surged, alarms blared. I triggered the last diversion, creating a path for Ethan and Carter to escape. I held Damien's gaze, knowing this confrontation was inevitable, yet my focus remained on my son. Suddenly, Carter's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Mom, go. Ethan's safe. Just get out." With a
a deep breath, I sprinted toward the exit, heart hammering, adrenaline surging. Behind me, the hub erupted in alarms and chaos, and in that moment I realized Damien had lost control. For the first time, his meticulously orchestrated world had cracks, and we were exploiting every one of them. Ethan emerged from the shadows, safe, alive, tears and relief flooding his face. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tightly, feeling the weight of months of fear, danger, and uncertainty lift ever so slightly. But even in that moment of relief, I knew the battle wasn't over. Damien was still out there, his network still alive, and the secrets we had uncovered were only the beginning. The files contained truths that would change everything, for Ethan, for me, and for anyone Damien had touched. We moved into the forest, the night swallowing us in its protective darkness. The hub receded behind us, a fortress of power and control, now vulnerable, and somewhere in the shadows, Damien watched, calculating his next move. Yet for the first time, I felt hope, a fierce, unyielding determination that no force, no matter how dark, could extinguish. Ethan was alive, I had him, and together we would uncover every secret, face every danger, and finally reclaim the life that had been stolen from him. The night was far from over, the road ahead treacherous, but for the first time, the future felt possible. And in that possibility, I found the courage to keep moving forward, no matter what Damien had planned next.